It does appear that we have a quorum here. We'll go through the roll call. There are a number of people missing, and we'll make a note of that, but we do have a quorum. So call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. according to the clock I have in front of me. And let's start with any action, any requests for excused absences.
City Manager Todd Parton and Mayor Martinez are both absent today due to illness.
Okay,
Would you like me to do roll call?
please.
Mayor Martinez is absent. Councilmember Carroll?
Here.
Treasurer Baron Janetti?
Here.
Chair Steve Cooley?
Here.
Vice Chair Thomas LeMasters?
Here.
Member Richard Beneke?
Here.
Member Anna Olvera?
Here.
Member Biliath Bengesa?
Here.
An alternative member, Andrew Forrester, is absent.
All right. The next item on our agenda is we'll have Mr. Lee Masters lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move on to the approval of the prior meeting's agenda. Anybody have any comments or corrections that may need to be made? Not hearing anything.
I noticed there were no financial reports, but we do have financial reports, so they're just late. I guess they're just late.
From the minutes from the last meeting?
No, you're talking about agenda, aren't you?
No, I'm talking about the minutes from our last meeting.
Oh. Okay.
Okay,
The next item, the approval adjustments to the agenda.
yeah, well,
We want to do the minutes now?
yeah, we approve the minutes and then it just seems to make more sense.
I move that we approve the minutes from.
Well, I have go ahead, you can move. I have a question on the minutes. The question is, Councilwoman Carroll wanted the CFD report that was put out to reflect that it was a civil grand jury.
Yes, I've attached the updated report to this agenda. That way it's part of the record.
Okay. So I don't know how, I guess my question is how specific do we want to be? When a suggestion like that is made, do we need it in the minutes or? Because to me, minutes are reminders of things past, present, and future to a certain extent. Future in the sense that if there's things left undone or need to be corrected, it gives people a reminder of what needs to be done. Obviously, I did it because I sent you a copy of the amended document.
Right.
But I'm not saying that that's bad or what you did is bad or anything like that. I'm just wondering how detailed we want to be when recommendations are made. Should they be in the minutes? It's just a procedural thing.
Typically, minutes hold all of the action. So any action that's made by the entire committee with a motion and a second, that's what's recorded. We also always have an audio and we always have a video of meetings also to kind of give the entire meeting also. And that's why I included it in the agenda, because the agenda becomes a permanent record. That way we have the updated draft as part of the permanent record.
Okay.
Okay, answer your question?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
so
I move that we approve the minutes from the November 6th meeting.
Second.
anybody opposed? Okay, with no opposal, we'll go ahead and approve that. And then we'll move on to the next item, that being the approval or adjustment to the agenda. Is anybody aware of anything that's on the agenda that should be, or anything that's not on the agenda that should be?
Well, I was just curious about normally the financial reports are there, when I open up the agenda, but they weren't there. I don't know if that's just, they were just late in coming or.
Yeah, sure. Jeff Molenkamp, for the record. We had the auditors out here for 2 straight weeks, and our staff was buried. I'll be honest with you. It takes about a day or so for them to pull together the reports that you typically get. And I reached out to the chair and told him that we were going to have some difficulty getting that because I didn't want to derail. So I presented what you have here today, but it was a little late. So I wanted to go over it with you because I wanted you to make sure that we stay on top of that. But we'll be back on top of it next month. And I would like to get some feedback, doesn't have to be tonight, but at some point in time as to the kind of information you want to see. I did talk to the chair briefly beforehand on some historical information on what's expected, but I also want to start presenting the information in the form that's most usable for you. So,
By way of clarification, I went back through the prior 2 years' meetings as far as the information that's out there on our website. And I did find the list of reports that we'd requested from the previous finance director. I printed that list out and gave it to Jeff so that he knows what we were expecting. And obviously, he had no knowledge of that. And so we got that information to him. He has it. And so we should be seeing what we expected, what we've requested in the past going forward. And of course, as has always been the case, we can always tweak those. We can always request other information that we may need, or if those are no longer serving our purpose, we can adjust that and go from there.
Can I make I think you bring up a very good point, which is maybe the list isn't everything that we wanted. Maybe it's too much, more than we really find useful. So maybe we should review the list as a committee and make sure that every one of those reports we still feel is important before. And I say this because I know the finance director is, as he mentioned, both working with the auditors because we're trying to establish a whole new world in terms of meeting our auditing deadline. So he's really all over that one. And he's also brand new. So if in fact there was 1 or 2 of the reports that we didn't deem maybe as important or we're not sure if we want to see, then I would hate to make him run to do that and then to pull them back. I'm just putting it out there to see what other committee members think. Do you think we should review?
So I'd be happy to bring you a list.
Can you read that list?
Yeah, certainly, or I can bring it to the next meeting and we can discuss it either way.
Okay.
Okay.
But if what would you prefer? For me to review it tonight or to bring it up at the next meeting?
I think if you just read off the list so the members are aware and
Sure.
they can think about it for the next meeting.
Certainly.
And then
Yeah,
we'll put it
because-
as an agenda item.
Yeah, because point of order, it's really not something we can take
Right.
action on to say, don't do this or do this.
Yeah.
And we would want everybody to feel comfortable in sharing what they feel is.
So I'll read off of what I have here, and then on the next finance committee meeting, we can put it as an agenda item for you to provide any clarification or direction as to the kind of information you'd like to see on an ongoing basis and the frequency of that information.
And
So-
this list was a standing order or a standing request that we established several months ago. And obviously, that wasn't related to Jeff by his predecessor.
Sure. So the list is, the first 2 items are related to the general fund. The first is a summary level information, actual versus budget, current month and year to date. The next one is current year versus prior year, and current month year versus and year to date. So this is a 2 comparative on the general fund. The second grouping is related to wastewater, which is, as you know, our other major fund. We have several major funds, but these are the 2 biggest. And on wastewater, it's actual versus budget, current months and year to date, and then the current year versus prior year. So similar information for both funds. Both of those information are not hard to provide to you. It's just basically what I'd like to do is understand the format you want. So if we agenda it next item, what I'd like to do is get some feedback as to how you'd like to see it, because we have some options on how to present. Then the second grouping of information are quarterly reports related to tax revenues received. And I'm guessing it doesn't really specify here, but I'm guessing that's some comparative data as well, both to budget and to prior years. And then a vendor report of vendors who have received over $10,000 for year to date. And then so that's quarterly. And then the last item is information with regard to audits of any of our restricted funds by oversight agencies. And I will I'll endeavor to make sure I know all those by the next Finance Committee meeting so I can tell you what they are. And then you can provide guidance as to whether you'd like to see that information on what kind of basis. So.
Okay, and then when we get down to it, well, we're doing it now, we'll move that for a future agenda for the next meeting, and we can discuss if that's still meeting our needs.
Mr. Chair.
I think it's a good idea periodically to review these kinds of things because after a while you get a feel for the information you're getting. Do you really need it on a monthly basis? And I know a lot of these we set up for quarterly. That was the exact discussion we had, is we don't need them every month, but quarterly would be nice.
Right.
Maybe even some semi-annually.
Yes, Barry?
I think it's important. I understand the staffing and the audit going on, but we can't close down the shop to wait till this audit's over for 3 months. I think the community and the public want to see that we're staying on top of our financials. And as a minimum, I think we need to see the financial report every month. That's what this committee's all about. The other ones put in a quarterly fashion are fine, but I'd hate to wait for 3 more months so we get to review financial data then. That doesn't put out a good optic.
Well, you'll be doing, end of year, you'll be wrapping up in December. So in January, we will have, this is the only month we will not have gotten them before the meeting. So I don't think it's that the reports don't exist and we're not staying on top of the financials. I think it's a question of just manpower to get them all pulled out when he hasn't had an opportunity to sort of see what our...
Yeah, I agree. It's just what the overall optics from the community would be.
Sure.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the next item is the policy regarding the removal of a committee member.
Mr. Chairman, do
Yes.
we need to ask regarding conflict of interest disclosure? I don't think we went
We
over
certainly do. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. As was stated, do we have any conflicts of interest or disclosure that needs to be set forth? Okay, appears that there are not. And again, we need to ask if there are any public comments. I don't see anybody from the public here. So
No, sir.
I'm making that assumption, but I shouldn't.
I
Do we
have no
any
requests.
requests?
No
All
written
right.
requests, no in-person
All
requests.
right, thank you. So we've adopted the minutes now, so let's move on to the policy regarding the removal of committee member. We have a staff report, and who's presenting that?
I can present it if you'd like. So, per the request of the committee, I put together just some information regarding the policy regarding removal of a committee member. So I copied and pasted the section within the ordinance that's in our municipal code, and I bolded the last sentence, which says, any committee member may be removed from the committee after 3 consecutive unexcused absences from meetings and a majority vote of the committee. This can be done also on the council level as well as the committee level. So I brought it here before you, should you decide to make that decision.
We'd had a question on this, whether it was within our prerogative to do this or the council, since the council appoints the person. But in this case, the committee can do that with 3 unexcused absences.
I would like to suggest that we not be given the authority to remove, since the council, like you said, has the authority to appoint. But What I'd like for this committee to do is have the authority to recommend to the council that a person be removed.
Legal reviewed this and said we had the authority.
Yeah.
Oh, legal review?
Legal reviewed it. This came up at the meeting and legal,
That's not,
no.
Yeah, and to change the ordinance would require a bigger action. We can certainly among ourselves decide that we'd rather pass that actual decision-making onto the council, and that's something we should probably discuss now.
It was always within our purview to remove someone if they had consistently been absent, and we felt that it had gotten to that threshold.
okay. But
That
that,
was discussed in the dais and then also confirmed by council.
okay. So it's not necessarily we have the authority, but the ordinance established for this committee states that a person absent for 3 consecutive shall be removed.
Can be dismissed by the committee.
We're not saying,
Yeah, it
I mean,
says the committee member may be removed from the committee after 3 consecutive unexcused absences from meetings
Yeah.
and a majority vote of the committee. It doesn't say we have to or that the person will be removed, but it says that we may vote to remove them, and I certainly think we have the option to, rather than remove them by the committee, request the council to determine if the council chooses.
so why haven't we done that? Is my question, if that was always in our purview.
We weren't sure when this came up a couple of months ago, and it now went before the council.
There was a lot of discussion about it among ourselves.
Oh, okay.
And it was indecisive on whether we had the authority to remove. And,
The committee had the authority.
yes,
Yeah.
the committee
Oh, okay.
had the authority. So the committee wanted it to go to council, for council to discuss whether we had the authority to remove. So it went to council, and then it was discussed in front of the attorney, and the attorney agreed we had the authority to remove. And my understanding is the spirit of council. And I say this because, too, it was always the spirit when the Finance and Administration Committee was formed in the first place, was that we were supposed to keep our house in order, so to speak. And the council was supposed to stock the pond with who they thought were qualified, committed people to do it. So I think it's a matter of us keeping our house in order.
Yeah, I just think from a procedural standpoint, as a committee, you can't really, excuse me, can't really function without members, and so if somebody doesn't want to be here for 3 consecutive meetings, maybe 2 people don't want to, we need to move on, because the council needs to know they need to appoint replacements, so.
Right, that's where this come up. We'll come back to our record keeper. I'm assuming we have a member or alternate that has missed more than 3 meetings. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that member is?
We have Andrew Forrester, our alternate member, who's not been at a meeting in quite some time. We tried making contact and was
Since
not
February.
successful. To answer your question, Mr. Beneke, I think maybe this didn't necessarily take a priority because it was just an alternate member position. Had it been a seat and we had been lacking, typically the clerk's office, it takes it a little more priority, and we address it, and then I go to seek applications. But because it was an alternate seat, it just kind of sat for a while.
Well, see, I came on board as I was an alternate member, and I think it's important for alternate members to attend the meetings, because there's a lot of stuff here that you need to get up to speed on, and information and continuity and everything like that. So, and people do resign for various reasons. I don't want to belabor this, but I just think it's important for this committee to understand that and make sure we have alternate members, and that when somebody doesn't fulfill those obligations, that we,
Correct.
dismiss them and
And
move on.
by way of information, I've also attempted to contact Mr. Forster. I've been unable to contact him, but I've been in contact with a household member and asked if he would please, if she could relay the message to have him please contact me. And this has been going on for several months, and I've never got a response back. So I'll put that information out. And it's my understanding the city is about to or is undertaking a drive for various boards and looking for new members. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct. So this coincides better with our current recruitment for applications, a little less time consuming to do it all at once. So right now we are accepting applications for various committees.
So this would free up a slot.
Correct.
And we have always had the position that an alternate member should attend the meetings, whether he was or she was in a voting position or not, because otherwise there's a lot of financial background, reporting, understanding of changes that have happened in the reports of the finances, that it would be very difficult to start somebody from square one. They'd have to sort of catch up. So we always encourage, and you were very good about always attending as an alternate meeting, which is why you got promoted. So let's hope that the spirit of our new
Yeah.
alternate choices also are committed to attending, whether they're
So
voting or not.
just in keeping our housekeeping and keeping it clear, are we to the point now that we can take an action on this?
Yes.
Okay,
I would
so-
need an action to be able to technically have that open seat to accept an
So
application.
I'm looking for a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion
I'll second it.
Okay,
to
it's been moved and seconded that we remove Mr. Forster.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Does voting to remove a member need to be agendized? So that
It's-
people have those?
It's on the
Or
agenda.
is this
This
considered?
is it.
Okay, yeah, this is it. Okay, and it requires a majority vote, and so I think we should do a roll call vote.
Sorry, just taking notes. Okay. Councilmember Carroll,
Yes.
Treasurer Baron Janetti,
yes.
Chair Steve Cooley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Thomas Lemasters,
Yes.
Member Richard Beneke,
Yes.
Member Anna Alvera,
Yes.
Member Biliath Bengesa.
Yes.
Okay, that's majority.
So that is the majority, and I assume, I don't assume, but will your office send out a letter to the last known address and advise him? And I know that the last time there were new people appointed, including some alternatives, it was stressed how important it was that they show up or let us know. So I don't think there's been any lack of information being shared there. So that moves us to the next item, which is the October financial reports. And Mr. Mellencamp, are you?
Sure.
There's
So
it.
I'll take you through this, and you haven't seen this, so I'm going to actually walk you through it. It'll take about 5 minutes or so. I'll hit some of the highlights. And I am interested as we go forward to next month, whether this format is of your liking or not. So I've changed it up a little bit from what you've seen on this is general fund only. I will be presenting the wastewater and stuff, but I found some things that we need to correct in the wastewater, so I wasn't prepared to bring it tonight. So let me take you through the taxes real quickly. As you can see, we're not, this is not something that happens linearly, the taxes. Most of our taxes, specifically property tax, come in December and May. They come in two large pieces. We do get some other small taxes that come in otherwise, but for the most part, those come in later. And as you can see, looking at prior years, they were low as well. If you add the personal property tax and real property tax, we're pretty much tracking to prior years with regard to at this point. You can look forward and see that sales tax is a little under on a linear basis. You would expect to be a third of the way through the year. But we do get some decent sized adjustments that come at the end of the year in June, and so we're not really behind. Again, with the other taxes, one of the big ones we have in there is actually tied to property tax. It's called VLF, which is what we get in the way of property tax in lieu of what used to be coming from automobile taxation and licensing. And that comes again in December and May, and that's a big piece. So that's why the other taxes is currently trending low. When those are annualized and adjusted, we're actually tracking pretty well. So you can see the others. I didn't really highlight anything. Business licenses were actually a little bit ahead of the curve at that point where we are. The treasurer had brought up last month about permitting and stuff, and you can see that we are tracking low on that. There's a couple pieces here. You can see that last year was a significant year. We had, I believe, Amazon was a big project that we had in those numbers, and there might have been a couple other projects. So this is somewhat dependent on timing and what projects are coming through the pipeline. December is a fairly good-sized month because people are trying to beat the changes in our rates, which changed January 1st. So we should see that number tick up a little bit in the next couple of months when you're looking at December numbers. Again, that's the same thing with inspections. As we move forward, you'll look, one of the bigger changes we have is in sanitation, which is solid waste. As you know, that's now been something that we've contracted out. So we have that contracting, what we did is we received a one-time, essentially, fee on that contract of $5 million. We talked about that a couple months ago. And that's what you see reflected in there, why that number is so far over budget. We will be getting, going forward, $2.1 million, and then it escalates in future years as a franchise fee. I don't have any other highlights on the revenues. Happy to answer any questions. As we move forward to looking at charges for services, you can see where we are. That's largely because of that $5 million. Going down to expenses, and so overall, you can see just before I go there, revenues, we're tracking at about 30%. That number doesn't really mean a lot. I'm going to be honest with you, because of these anomalies, property tax is not in, we have the $5 million that did come in. So that number, you shouldn't look at that number and go, oh, like we're right on target. I can tell you that the numbers I've looked at suggest that we're actually going to be ahead of target because of the $5 million. At the end of this year, we'll be well over budget on our revenues. How much is yet to be seen?
A couple of quick questions, if I can, address on the revenue side. Under the personal property taxes, there's no amount listed year-to-date for the prior 2 years. Is that just because it wasn't received until a later month, or what's the cause for the anomaly compared to
I think
current
it's
year?
a categorization. I think it was being tracked in the property taxes, the real property taxes, as opposed to separately. I think that was the primary issue there.
Okay. And the business licenses, looks like it almost doubled year-to-date. What do you believe is the cause for that?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I can look into that for you. I looked at that this morning and said, wow, that's pretty high, and then I got derailed with some other projects, but I will look at that because that's something that I highlighted as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the revenue before we move to expenses?
Just real quickly on the personnel costs, just want to let you know where we are. There is an anomaly there, the prepayment on the PERS liability. Our benefits look really quite high. If you look at that at $2.8 million versus a budget of 6.2, that's 45%. We should be about a third of the way through the year. The reason that's high is because we prepaid, it's about $1.3 million. The PERS is broken into two pieces. It's our regular payments that we pay for ongoing staff costs, and then we pay for what they call an unfunded liability. And that's a piece that's paying for what hasn't been paid in past years, essentially catching up. And the city made a decision to prepay that up front, which is a wise decision in my opinion, before I got here. But about $1.3 million, and then that gets allocated out to all the various different budgets and funds, for that matter, in an appropriate manner. By paying that up front, we reduced the interest charge that PERS would have charged us, which I believe is about 5.5% to 6%. So it was a good decision to pay that up front. But because it's been paid up front, it makes it look like we're trending too high. So I wanted to point that out, because otherwise we're tracking pretty well on our expenditures. We're actually a little under on the personnel costs. We're tracking at about 27.5, And we've got 8 pay periods, so we should be at about just around a little over 30%. So we're tracking good on the personnel costs. Overall, again, the numbers don't, sometimes I don't even like to present these numbers because they're not as dialed in as I want them to because we're not linear. But the good news overall is if you look at prior years through this point in time, we were tracking far less than we are now. That's largely because of that $5 million. So we're tracking quite well at this point in time. How well we do at the end of the year will be hard to say. I'll have a better assessment of that as we get to the mid-year point.
Then just one question for information. The $5 million, is that restricted in any way?
That money is sitting in the general fund, and so it will be available for council action at a future date.
Thank you. Any other questions?
On administrative overhead, there's deficit there. Is this a new account?
Which page, I'm sorry?
Second page at the very bottom, under operating costs,
Admin overhead?
admin overhead.
Yeah, so that's an interesting what we do, and I'll have to get the calculations for you. It's a great question. Is we actually charge internal services to an admin overhead account. So basically, centralized services are charged out to the other accounts, and so it has a deficit. It has a negative showing up in your overhead costs because it's borne out in other costs throughout the departments. It's not the way I want it set up ultimately. I'm going to set up internal service agencies, but right now that's the way we're doing it.
Yeah, I'd suggest you take a look at that. That's not normal, I don't think.
Well, it is accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish. It's just kind of an unartful way of doing it. And what it is basically what we're trying to do is when we're doing services that go out to the rest, all of their various departments, whether it's finance or personnel or administration, we charge those different accounts for that so you get an accurate. There's many reasons to do that. Part of it is our fee structure, so we're charging the right amount for the fees and the services that we provide. But part of it is other cost allocation methodology, so that you can look and see what does it cost to provide police services and those different things on a fully burdened basis, when you push those costs out. But right now what they're doing is they're charging it as a negative in one account and charging it as a positive in the other accounts. So,
Interesting.
Okay. Comment?
For the record, I like this format as a good summary report because having the 3 years aligned plus the budget really allowed us to see things jump out at us. So this is a really good summary report. In addition to the other ones that have been requested, this is a good top-level format, in my opinion.
I second. I like this format.
And excuse me, I lost my voice. And I think it's good when you put the notations on the side.
Yes.
Yes.
Such as a one-time
Very much so.
revenue, notes like that.
More notes, the better.
So,
Agreed.
agreed.
You'll know when you need notes. You'll have some anomaly that you need to explain.
Yeah.
And you, if I may, you brought out a very good point, Jeff, in that you mentioned that the way that the administration overhead is being tracked, it serves a purpose, but it's not the way that, or the method, or the expression that you'd like to see going forward. So I fully expect to see that we're going to get some reporting changes like that as you want to express it differently. And so if you'll just remind us that those are the changes, I think it'll be positive. Because I do agree that, when somebody pulls this report or something in a public records request a year from now, they're not going to get that explanation.
a negative and expense category does jump out at you, and that was a great question.
So it's very valuable that you make those changes and then that you explain them. We appreciate that.
So, input. Would the committee like to see this report on a regular basis? Anybody who would not like to see it on a regular basis? Okay, I'm getting no input.
Yeah, I
so-
definitely
so,
would like to see it
Yeah,
on a
if we
regular
could,
basis.
we could add that to your list, Jeff, and,
Well, I think this gives you a top view.
Yep.
And if you have questions, you can delve down.
Correct.
You don't need to have reams and reams of information.
correct. Yes,
Good.
all right,
I agree, but we're gonna talk about this next meeting, right?
right, yes.
So let me let me
Digest it.
digest it,
And
yeah.
if I can ask Mr. Bolenkamp, can we count on you to find out what happened with the business license number?
I will. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll look into that for sure, and I'll bring.
Thank you very much.
I'll bring a couple options available to you to look at next month. This one, obviously, but I'll also look at one or two other models that I can bring to you, and you can, see which works best for you.
Okay, so we're gonna receive this and forward it on to city council. Does that take an action?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay, so can I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay?
Second.
Second? Okay, so it's been moved and second that we accept these October financial reports and move them forward them on to the city council. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so it passes, and we'll move on to the next. Okay, so we have a list of the council assigned tasks, and we have them listed there. And then there's a draft CDF talking points. Who is presenting that?
Those are talking points that were attached to
Okay.
the agenda
So-
from last time.
From last time.
They're updated with the corrections that were requested. I attached it so that it became part of the permanent record.
All right.
Yeah, the way it was left last month was that, well, there was a minor, not a minor change, but a change in that we needed to stipulate that it was a grand jury recommendation, not a civil grand jury, not a criminal grand jury investigation. Also, we thought it would be a good idea to get together with one or more members of the Board of Realtors. I don't know why it did not occur. I mean, that was a task given to us, but that did not occur. So I don't know if we still need to do that. I think was someone going to look into talking to Webb about?
Todd was supposed to,
I have some input from Todd. He asked me to
Okay.
pass along. He has not been able to nail down a date to sit down and talk to the realtors. With the holidays coming up, they don't have a very open schedule right now, but he's hoping after the holidays we'll have one. The realtors do meet here monthly on a Thursday, if that helps at all. But he said after the holidays would be easier to touch base with them, but they are looking forward to a meeting.
I just know Anna gets pretty busy after the first of the year with her tax accounting business,
Season.
tax season, so.
Nancy, just one thing. Nancy, was it Councilman White that said he had talked to a realtor or some realtors and they were really interested in this? It was either him or was it Mr. Lara? Anyway, at our last council meeting, at the end, he says, because I think he didn't think it was something of a good idea,
Well, I
and he
think,
got a positive response.
he didn't talk to I don't think,
Well,
board of realtors.
Not
I
the
think he-
board, but
I think he talked to a realtor who said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So he mentioned that on the dais. I think in this meeting, I think Todd and I both thought it was a good idea to talk to the realtors. And the only reason is that for part of this, they're the audience. And so if we're talking about, creating a pamphlet that they can download off like an ebook they download off the website, or if we're talking about doing some sort of a newsletter, or we're doing any of the things we suggested, it just didn't seem right to not include them because they may have a suggestion on when it should arrive, or if it can be incorporated into something that they send out and therefore it'll get read more. There may be many things that or maybe nothing, that they have to say that are good suggestions that might enhance the process. But, because we're really interested, all of us, in getting results, I just thought, and Todd did too, I think. I think he was on board with that. that it would be a good idea to just talk to the realtors. And rather than talk to one realtor who just might say over a beer, that's a swell idea, it just seemed like it was good to go to the Eastern Valley Real Estate Association, because they meet here, they're very well organized, they, care about what goes on in the city. There are a lot of local realtors, some of them bigger than others, so it seemed like maybe they'd have somebody that could talk to us.
No,
You guys as the subcommittee.
I think it's I think it's a great idea. It didn't happen, so
Yeah, it's okay.
I want to make sure we keep it alive, and I want to make sure it does happen, because I believe you're right. It is something, we need their input, no doubt about it.
Well,
So-
for a different reason, I just got their legislative person's name from the Eastern Valley Association of Realtors and another legislative person's name. So if Todd can't get the name, then I can just ask that person who would be a good contact for you guys to try to make it a little easier and not make it a big deal for you to go find somebody to talk to.
Because I definitely want their input, primarily because whatever we come up with, they're going to have to be on board to implement. If it's
Yeah.
handing out brochures, it's just putting on their website, whatever they do, they're going to have to be on board, or else they're not going to do it, and it'd be fruitless for us to even pursue it further. So,
Correct.
And-
But we want to keep this moving, so do we want to agendize a small report, a status report for the next meeting? If anybody's been able to make that contact, if we've got that information.
I doubt with the holidays,
Holidays.
we'll be
Okay.
able to do that
So,
before next
would it
meeting.
make
But
more sense to put it on for February's meeting?
it actually is part of our agenda. If we're going to roll these items over every meeting, it'll be there. It's
Okay,
there.
so then I guess that's what we want to agendize, is roll this list into the next meeting and get an update on each of these items.
Right.
Until they're all resolved.
I agree. The only thing is that if we hear back from you on things we have to discuss and recommend, we're gonna have to make sure that it's worded so that we can sort of take action
Yes, please.
on it. If we get to that point, we don't wanna end up having to wait another month
Right.
just to put it on the agenda to take action. So
Right.
So,
I guess in particular on the CFD,
Yes.
since that's the one we're really pushing first.
okay, so you can word that appropriately, correct? Okay, so then let's jump down to the next one. Assist with the request for the RFP for the Independent Financial Audit Services. I don't know, Jeff, do you have information on this, or is this something we need from Todd? When are we expecting for this to be put together to go out?
So I think we'll probably need to, so I'm going to be getting a draft audit in, I'm hearing the date is December 20th in from the auditors. I plan on going through that over the holidays, but probably not on Christmas. And then by early January, I hope we resolve any issues or challenges we have with the draft audit. And my hope is to bring it to the Finance Committee mid to late January, and to bring it to the City Council early to mid-February. So that's my time frame. As far as getting the RFP together, I think we probably should start that right after the holidays are done, probably by early to mid-January. I think we should be, if there's going to be a component of the Finance Committee involved in that RFP, I'll certainly be happy to take the lead on getting the RFP document together, but we will need to get probably an assignment of people for that committee, and so that we can move that process forward. We'll probably need to get that process through by March to early April, so that I can get a new auditor on board, or if we retain the same auditor, that's obviously a possibility.
And I think our discussion on that in the past is that I had volunteered to do that, and I think Barry was looking at that as well.
I'm looking at the names now, Steve, myself, and Jeff.
Yes. So if you can just you know?
So you typically, for me, I start an RFP like that with establishing criteria on how we are going to assess the qualifications. Usually cost is one of them, certainly their experience levels and things of that nature, and then the kind of work that they can do for us. So I'll take a crack at some criteria, and we probably should agenda that probably by early January, and we can move forward with it.
Okay. And then evaluate the City of Beaumont investment and financial policies. I'm not sure where we've moved on that or if we've done anything at this point in time, other than ask the members to consider who may have some interest in that or some expertise.
I've discussed this with Jeff, and it's just right now, this is an item I think we need to delay a little bit. This is extra over and above the processes that are going on, so he's aware of it. We are, and we're just going to hold on this until we get through the audit.
And
So just a small update, and I concur that there's a process here involved, and it's actually fairly easy to draft a policy. I'm going to be honest with you. I can find 5 cities that have a policy that's close to what we want, and we can adjust it. The process after that is how to manage the investment strategy, and I'll need to coordinate with the city treasurer on the best way to do that. There are some that are more full-reaching, but they cost a little bit of money, where they'll do a lot more of this hands-on management for you versus us having to manage it ourselves. I have information that I actually forwarded to you today. And so I'm actually getting my team rolling on this because the city council is interested in revenue options that came up at the last budget meeting, and one of our revenue options is to drive our investments strategy. So I'm starting to move on this now because I see that it's an opportunity for us.
okay. Then number 4 was evaluate the security of the city Beaumont's telecommunication systems. And I believe that Todd was going to get back with us on some kind of a report from the IT department. But it wasn't ready to go forward right now because of some new staffing and some new changes.
Yes,
and
the IT
obviously Tad's
department
not here.
has 2 new staff just within this past maybe 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get everything kind of situated.
Okay. So I think that's probably still being taken care of. I think we're fine to rely on Tad to fill a little better and report back to us on that. And then developing a process for grant reporting, I believe that was left pretty much open to some thinking and some giving some concepts as to where we might go with that and what we might consider.
Yeah, the last 2 items, the grant reporting process and the program for general public finance, we had them on hold till July 2020.
Right. Okay. So I think
Before,
we're moving with this. We just want to make sure we continue to. Yes.
before we leave this, I want to mention one thing to Jeff. I don't know where we're going to go with the CFD, the subcommittee, what you've sort of recommended so far and where we're going to end up. Excuse me, but if we end up having to budget something for a newsletter or for any of that work, we're going to have to keep that in mind for the budget. That's all. So we don't know what we're going to need yet.
And I think a question was asked, and I don't remember if it was answered or not, but do you have an idea of the cost to mail a newsletter? I know that can be very significant.
You know, I don't particularly know that. There's probably a variety of options, including online options and things of that nature. I don't really know. I'd have to get back to you.
Okay. So I think there were some strong comments about wanting it mailed, and I think that cost may be a real issue. Yes.
Well, I think until we design what it is we want to do, we don't want to chase finding out the costs too early. Excuse me for the coughing. It was only mentioned in the subcommittee's work that was an option. we haven't really taken action to say we're going to do that yet.
Correct.
We don't really know hypothetically if you meet with the realtors and they say, give us the information, it'll go out with our newsletter. So we kind of don't really have the personality of that enough, I don't think, to justify going out and finding out costs, because he's not going to know what to
Right.
look for.
Yeah.
So I think we need to hold off the costing a little bit. I'm only mentioning it to him and I apologize, Jeff, I don't mean to refer to you as him like you. I talk about my kids when they're young. But I just don't want to avoid an understanding that somehow or other, whatever we decide to do relates to money. When we have to do the work, somehow or other, if it ends up in our bucket, we're going to have to figure out a way to pay for it too.
I think there was also some exploration of a different method, like online, that the city had started, like an online newsletter, and we were gonna refer as to maybe that was a different venue that we were gonna take also, to keep, the cost down.
Yeah.
Those are great points, and I think that handles that.
So
And I'll-
it's just kind of a heads up.
You don't worry, we will look when we know we got a good solid idea, then we'll worry about the tactic to implement it. There's lots of ways to skin the cat, I believe, on this.
Yeah.
And it seems to me there's two audiences you have. You have people who are contemplating buying a home, and they're going to get into it, and they want to know in advance what this CFD thing is and how does it impact them. And then there's people that are already paying it, and they need to understand kind of what it is I'm already paying for. So it's a similar information. It goes to both parties, but there's two different audiences.
Correct.
Okay, so I think we've covered that, and we have a good handle on where we're going. So then we look at future agenda items. Is there anything sitting out there that anyone's currently aware of right now, other than we've just discussed this evening, keeping this list of council-assigned tasks, and then next meeting, looking at the financial reports that we've had and determining if those are of value or if there's something else we want to see.
Mr. Chair, I would just suggest that I don't have a date yet, but sometime in January, I am going to want to bring the audit to the Finance and Audit Committee. So that'll be a future agenda item.
That was the next thing that I was going to speak to or talk with the committee. Personally, I would like to see the draft audit before it goes out as a final. And if that means that we'd have to call a special meeting to see that and review that, what is the feedback from the committee? We've in the past been presented a draft audit 4 days before it goes to the council. That's kind of useless. And my thought is, I think that we probably need to see the draft audit, but then that's a timing issue sometimes, that it doesn't work out, that it's going to be done and presented to the finance department in a time frame that meets our next scheduled meeting.
What are the legal timeframes? What are the legal timeframes?
I'm not sure there is a legal date when it has to be done. There's some recommended dates, but
See, we have
Well, is the question, what's the legal dates on the audit? Or is the question, what is the legal requirements for this committee to see it and for how long we're supposed to have it before
Well-
the meeting?
legal requirements for the council to approve,
Okay,
because then we go back to set our timeline for when we review it. And I agree, having it 4 days before, or a day before the council gets it is not a real good review of a document.
Jeff, what is the process with the audit? They're doing it now. Are they going to provide a draft for you and the city manager?
So we should get the draft before Christmas.
Okay.
The draft will be, it'll be fully populated draft. We'll have all the numbers, all the notes will be completed. And it's our job to go through and look at it and make sure that the numbers tie and they make sense with our financial system, make sure nothing's been misclassified, and that they're in proper form. My job then is to make sure that that fits into a management discussion and analysis at MD&A, and make sure that those numbers tell a story. Because when they come over, there are a lot of numbers and a lot of schedules, and it's my job to then make sure that that tells a story. And to convey that story, I would think that it would be my recommendation that the audit committee focuses most directly on that story, that message, certainly looking to make sure that the numbers tie to the schedules, if for those that are kind of more inclined that way, and then to look at the fundamentals of how the audit is prepared, and that's in the footnotes to the financial statement. So there's a few areas that I would direct you to look more directly to make best use of your time, so that it's valuable, because sometimes just burying through the financials, you can get lost in those. I mean, certainly some people enjoy getting lost in those, but I'll get those before Christmas. It'll take us a few weeks, quite honestly, to make sure they're good, to make sure that it fits into the storyline, which is the management discussion and analysis, at which point in time we would try and bring it to this body to look at it. At that point, there's not a lot, unless there's something that just jumps out, there's not a lot to change in the numbers. It's more an understanding of the disclosures, and to make sure that that disclosure makes sense to you and ultimately to the public. So it's a little bit less about changing numbers around than it is making sense of the message that's behind the numbers. As far as the timing, the only concern I would have is cost concern, and it's not that big a deal, but if I have to bring the partner in here twice, once for the finance committee and then another time, say a few weeks later for the council, it just costs us money. It's probably an extra $1,000 or $2,000 for that second visit. It's okay. It's just that there's a cost associated with doing that.
My thoughts are more that before the city management sends back the draft with the changes or the acceptance as it is, that the finance committee ought to have an opportunity to look at it and see if we agree or if we see something that jumps out. Without getting into specifics, there's something that's been on the audit that should have never appeared there. It wasn't material. And why was it there? And that's the kind of thing, again, it's not the numbers. We can get access to those numbers, but we don't have it, and we're not real familiar with those. But as Jeff puts it, the story and what makes sense, and we're looking at it from not that kind of an understanding, but the understanding that the public is going to see. Do those statements, those explanations make sense to us? And again, it makes no sense for us to see that after the city's already sent it on, or at the same time the management's sending on, then we do appear as a rubber stamp. But we need enough time that we can at least look at it and give some feedback before it goes back for a final version. And then my question is, if the timing isn't so that we can receive that prior to the next meeting, if it's necessary to hold another meeting of this committee for that sole purpose, is to review that and discuss whether we're ready to vote on it, or not necessarily vote on it, but input on that. Yes?
First of all, what we have done in the past meetings is we do, and I say this for clarification for Jeff also, and of course you have to talk to the city manager too, but we've always expected the auditors to show up twice. So that's kind of a given that we're gonna, and I don't think, I can't speak for all of council, but all of council, I think would support that, and that was the message that I've always heard on that point. So if that clarifies that for you. I want to address two things that we're kind of discussing here. One is the intent of the council for what the body of the Finance and Audit Committee should be doing with the audit, with the financial reports, and with everything, is that we are an educated set of eyes, so to speak, that is supposed to be looking in depth and making sure that there's quality and that things are done right in all of the financial reports and in all of the audit work that's done. So you are correct. We really do need to see the reports in time. But it's my understanding that it's kind of like, and you have to forgive me, I come from the software world. It's kind of like an alpha beta and then a final release situation. What Jeff is going to get is the equivalent of the alpha of the audit, which means that it's very raw. And he needs to be able to go back and forth with the auditors and read through it and talk to the city manager and make sure that there's no just blatant misconceptions or things that need shifting or, this is not how we record this or that kind of clarification to make sure it gets through the alpha stage. And he needs the freedom to be able to do that as quickly and as thoroughly as he can do. We're really like the beta stage of the audit. After that gets to a particular stage, the beta stage of software is when they think they're going to release it to the public, but they haven't really done it, and you're really supposed to give it like a last bulletproof testing. So we're really functioning sort of like the beta stage. It seems like the council is, but the council doesn't really have the time to go deep into the audit. So when we get it from Jeff and we have the auditors here and when he's already gone through his alpha stage, we're supposed to go through the beta stage of making sure that we understand how it's been recorded, all the steps that are done, whatever the questions that we, like you say, and we need to get it in time enough to be able to do that job well, because nobody wants to form an opinion on something that you don't have adequate information on. And then, really, the council is the final stage. But when they get it, they need to get it with confidence that the alpha stage has been thorough and that Jeff has done his job and city manager's done his job at that stage, and then that we truly beta it and truly review it and make sure that we understand and we believe that from what we've been able to find out that everything is proper and well done.
You explained that very well.
Does that help?
Yes, you explained that very well. That's the way it answered my questions. My recollection is that the last time we received it, 2 days before our meeting. We got it on the Friday before the meeting. We had our meeting, and they said, "Here it is. This is what it is. Approve it and give it to council so that they can finalize it tomorrow." And that's what we don't want to see. And if that means that the timing is such that it's not going to drop in a week or so before our meeting, then we may have to do something
I
in
would,
order to make that time.
I would not be opposed, and we have done this in the past, I would not be opposed to having a special meeting specifically on that audit, specifically just for that audit. We've done it in the past, and it's only, I think, prudent on our part to do that, to make sure we do our due diligence before we recommend anything to the council.
I agree. So then I think, Jeff, you're going to be the driver on that, and through the clerk's office, let us know when you receive that, and then at that point in time, we can decide if there's appropriate amount of time.
So I'll look at how we progress, if they hit their first timetables and how that looks. And then at our next meeting, I'll be in a position to give you good guidance as to our timetable. I'm still targeting to have it to Finance Committee sometime mid to late January. So I'll be advising you as I get more information. But I will plan for a couple of weeks between then and when it goes to council. So it could be that we don't go to council until the second meeting in February. And so we'll work through that. I hear the council loud and clear, or the committee loud and clear, that you'd like to see it with enough time to look at it carefully and to give feedback that might actually alter some of the presentation or form of the audit before it goes to council.
Excellent.
Jeff, are the auditors on track with the schedule you just discussed? Are they? Because they're the time limiting factor
I'm
now.
going to be talking to them Thursday. It's my hope. I've worked with enough auditors over enough years to know that they're very much your best buddy, and they're working with you hard, and you're their best client when they're here. And when they leave, they're working on other clients, and sometimes you fall by the way, and you have to be the squeak wheel a little bit. So we're going to be squeaking on Thursday with them, and I'll let you know more as I get more information.
I mean, because the goal was to get this thing closed out in February this year.
Yeah, no, if I don't close it down in February, that's another reason to find a new auditor. But it's my full intention that this will be wrapped up by the end of February through council. And unless there's something that I'm unaware of right now, I'm not aware of any discrepancies, problems that would prevent us from making that.
Okay, I think that covers the future agenda items. That moves us to the finance director's comments. We've been pretty open and everything from Jeff.
I think we covered the audit. I think we beat that to death.
Yeah.
We covered the investment policy. That was another item I had. I do have a new budget analyst that started today. So I'm now fully staffed, which is good. We have a lot of budget work to do coming up. The budget workshop on the 17th is coming up. We had one on the 21st of November and another one on the 17th. We'll be working hard to get the budget started. Our process is going to be a little different than we've done in prior years. I'm going to be very involved in meeting with the management team, and so it's going to be a very collaborative style, and I think that's the city manager and I are both on the same page with regard to that. So I'm excited about it. It's a great team. I've really been so far really pleased with how well they've received me, and at least they haven't shut their door in my face too many times. So I think we're making good progress with the team. And now that I'm fully staffed, I feel like about a month or two, if everybody kind of settles in, by early part of next year, we should really be working on all cylinders.
Okay, thank you for that. And then we come to our meeting review and the treasurer's monthly finance and audit committee reports.
And I think what I'm going to mention is that we've really looked at the process for this audit to keep it on track. I think that's the number one thing, so we can deliver an audit all the way through the steps, hoping that February is the target date to deliver it. I'll give an update on the council assigned tasks briefly, that we're moving ahead on those, and some that we've sat on. The council's aware how we've divided and prioritized these. And I guess I'll report that we dismissed our alternative member.
Okay, thank you. And just one last little comment. As you're dealing with other members of the community and out there, from us too, let them know that the city is looking and will be looking for other members, and drive a little interest there. And a lot of times people don't see what's there. It helps to get a little word of mouth, send them to the website. So with that, we'll adjourn this meeting at 7:09 p.m. with a note that our next regular meeting of the Finance and Audit Committee is scheduled for Monday, January 6th at 6 p.m., same location. Thank you all for your time.